Hi.
Do you ever catch yourself just bopping along to the beginning?
Yeah. So how are you doing this fine Friday?
I'm doing excellent. I am super excited about today. Like, you know how you're always super excited because you're fabulous like that? I am like really excited about today.
I know we've got some really ridiculously amazing folks that we're going to be talking to. Amanda Trauger and Erik Essig. Excuse me. I always muck that up. I don't even know why. I probably even did there. Kathy, I like knowing that they're from BMorrow, and knowing the BMorrow folks like we do. Did you think that we were going to get them on so early in our show?
No, but I am really excited for the opportunity because they're really awesome.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So, for one, welcome to TETV. We are going live as per usual on every other Friday for a day in the life at, this is a day in the life at Brian Morrow Productions or B Morrow Productions. I want to say that at TETV, we're really kind of trying to highlight API or Asian American Pacific Islander History Month. It's dear to all of our hearts, and we want to make sure that we are like elevating those voices throughout all of our broadcasts. Today, though, we were just so amped to talk about BMorrow. Like that sounds so dumb. I'm beside myself with being jazzed. So that being said, shall we introduce our folks?
Yes, we shall.
Okay. All right.
Hey.
It's so cool.
Let's introduce all of ourselves. Yeah. Erik, you start first.
Hey, gang. Thanks so much for having us on today. We are so thrilled to be joining you. And Kathy, I was also bopping along to the music. I was like, this is what SNL must feel like. All those people who are like ready to go live. And I'm like probably just as nervous as all those people. So anyway, hey, everybody. I'm Erik Essig. I'm the executive in charge of creative and production at B Morrow Productions. And I'm joined today, other direction, by my counterpart, socially distanced, Amanda Trauger. Amanda, introduce yourself.
Hey guys, I'm Amanda Trauger, and I am producer, designer, creative director, and treasure hunter of all things BMP.
Yes.
We're very excited to be here.
Yeah, totally. And so like, just to say, we are not joined today by our fearless leader, Brian Morrow, but he is our namesake, and we go by all sorts of names. A lot of folks call us B Morrow. A lot of people just call us BMP. So we refer to ourselves as BMP. So by all means, use BMP, use B Morrow. We kind of get it. What matters is everybody's talking about us. So we're just happy that y'all are even saying our name, that we are in a conversation, that clients are picking up the phone and calling. So yeah, we're super thrilled to be here.
Very exciting. So would you guys be able to talk about your journeys and your paths that took you to BMP?
Yeah, I will start, I guess, and then hand it off to Amanda, because Amanda is actually officially one of our newer team members. We actually just recently added a new member to our team, Scott Devine, who's not on the call, but he's downstairs listening and watching live. But Amanda was right before him, joined the team officially. So my journey getting to BMP starts all the way back in 2013 when I was a Next Gen member with Kathy Dixon for the TEA, and we met. And, you know, I started kind of bumping around TEA events, and I met this guy, Brian Morrow, who was at Seaworld at the time, and he was doing all these awesome things at Seaworld, and he kind of took a liking to me for whatever reason. I'm a lot. and I acknowledge that. And I also was getting my degree in hospitality management. And so for me, I felt like a bit of an outsider to the industry because, like, I was talking to Kathy, she's a brilliant engineer and designer, and, some other wonderful people, Marissa Blake, Ariel Rassel, and, they're getting these degrees where you're drawing and you're writing and you're doing these kind of what I would call creative things. And I was like, well, I'm creative too, but I have this management degree. And Brian, right or wrong, was like, I feel like I see something in you and I want to give you a chance. And so as I was graduating, he said, hey, I don't have anything for you right this second, but start a business and then an LLC so you can contract with Seaworld, and eventually I'll call you, I promise. And I was like, yeah, sure, of course. But then a couple of months later, he actually called, and I will never forget, I was driving down the highway to go to New York City with my parents, like right before 4th of July. And I get this Orlando phone number, which I ignored because I'm a good millennial. And unless I know the number, I let it go to voicemail. And it was a voicemail from Brian saying, hey, I hope you started that LLC. I've got some work for you. And I think he said, how do you feel about Elmo and jellyfish? So I called him back and basically was like, yeah, of course I started that LLC. And then promptly, as I was scooting through Pennsylvania, looked up how to expedite forming a business. So I started freelancing. I started my own company called Erik Productions. And I freelanced for Seaworld for several years. That's actually where I met Amanda. And I freelanced not only with Seaworld, but several other companies until eventually Brian and Anthony Esparza and Amanda Trauger, all wonderful people at Seaworld, welcomed me into the fold. And so at that point, I worked at Seaworld full-time as an experienced design manager. So Amanda and I supported all 13 domestic parks as part of a very tiny but mighty team. And after a while, I kind of felt like the seas of change, pun intended, were coming to Seaworld. And so I departed and went to work at iTech as a creative director for a short period, which was a wonderful experience, getting to work with the international market. And I didn't feel like that was quite the right fit for me either personally. And so I went back to freelancing, and then Brian scooped me up. And there I am. And I'm a rambler, so put me off.
No, it was absolutely perfect. We love hearing about everyone's path, even if it's like, if you think it's long, it really wasn't, but it was amazing.
Good. But Amanda's got a really great story of how she came to work with the company, and she's got a great background. So buckle in.
Thank you, Erik. So my journey began, I think it was 2006. My very, very first position in anything that was themed entertainment was at Busch Gardens, Tampa. And I was there for their Hallow Scream. I was a scare actor in a haunted house. It was a dead bride, and it was called Deathly Departed. And it was probably one of the best, most fun jobs ever, especially when you're in college and all you have to do is like hang out with your friends and dress up and scare people. So that was wonderful. And then it got better after that because I loved, being in that moment and enjoying working with those people so much. I ended up coming back to Busch Gardens, and I started working as a brand ambassador, which is, at the time, it was Anheuser-Busch owned. So I was teaching beer tastings as my college job. So it was like, the worst. There was like so much research we had to do. But it was a great experience. I've met some of my best friends there that I still keep in contact with all the time, and watch our kids grow up together. It's great. But when I moved over, my educational background is in interior design. Right when I was finishing up my degree, that's whenever, everything started to change with the company, AB InBev, Blackstone, and everything went public. And they decided to close the Brewmasters Club, which at that point I was ready to figure out what the next step was. So I had some great leadership that passed my portfolio around over to our merchandise leadership. And they said, hey, we're looking for a visual merchandiser. Are you interested? And I'm like, absolutely. And they said, okay, we'll give you a 30-day trial. Let's see how you do. And then I was there for 8 years. So that's how that went. It was great. I got to work with all the facilities in the park. So operations. I would go and look at some zoo items and help with signs. I was able to work on some culinary venues. I was able to get all of these experiences. And that was when I actually met Brian Morrow. And Brian Morrow was working in our corporate office at the time, and he was working on a little tiny project you may have heard of called Falcon's Fury, in Pantopia at the time, which is where they changed over our old Timbuktu area to this new beautiful Pantopia land. So I went treasure hunting with Brian Morrow, and I got to know him very well during that time, and it was just the best experience. My project there was the Painted Camel Bazaar, and that's kind of the project that jump started my set dressing, treasure hunting, interiors kind of career, because that's the project where I got to do all the picking. I went to Atlanta. I said, that's going to be for here. That's going to be for there. I set up my office in the shop for 2 weeks. I was art directing. It was the whole thing. It was wonderful. And then after that was finished, I kept moving through, became merchandise manager, leadership. I learned a lot of back of house. I learned how, the product gets where it gets and what you need to put forward to sell. And I was able to learn a lot of the back of house that you need to really run that kind of a business. And then as I moved out of there, I saw that it was time for me to kind of get back into my roots. So there was a posting at the corporate office for Brian's team, and it was the creative development manager, which at the team, I think that is whenever Erik was there contracting, it was Brian, and that was the whole creative team. So he was looking for another person. I was able to go over and work with Brian in that position, and it was, one of the best decisions of my career, because I have got to work on so many wonderful projects since then, and I got to meet so many people and really learn about our industry.
I have a question. Are you ready for my crazy question?
And I worked on.
Oh, sorry. You froze. Okay. I thought you were. Go ahead. Oh, I'll ask my question when you're done.
I'm rambling. I'll wrap up. I was able. I was able to work on projects in all of our theme parks, but what I started working on right before the end was Sesame Street Land at Seaworld Orlando. And at that time, that's when Brian broke off and he started B Morrow Productions. And he said, I think it would be great for us to partner together to be your production company and to bring BMP in to work on set designs, art direction, set dressing. And so we partnered up, and that was great because I still got to work with that team, even though we weren't all the owners anymore. And we brought that to completion. Hopefully everybody has seen it. If you haven't, please go see it. Even if you don't have little kids, it is such a fun experience. And it's a great moment to enjoy. But after all that wrapped up, then pandemic happened, like everyone else. So I was at this moment in life trying to figure out what to do next. And I got a call from Erik and Brian that said, hey, we got this little project called I Love Christmas Movies, and it's for 4 Gaylord properties. And we need to purchase, I don't know, 1 million trees and 3,000 individual props and all these things. Can you please come be our treasure hunter? I said, yes. And then 2 days later, I was on a plane going shopping for BMP for the project. I was able to help them with I Heart Christmas Movies. Since then, I worked on a lot of projects for them, interiors, some fun projects at Gaylord Palms, a lot of Christmas pieces. So I've been able to just grow, and it's been so great because being part of this team they're so family, and it's kind of like being back with your family again. That's awesome. Me in a nutshell. Very quick.
A little nutshell. Okay, here's my question. Can you please tell us about this lovely pink hard hat that's happening behind you?
This guy?
Yeah.
I brought this because this was the first time that I really got to work with BMP. I was the owner at Seaworld, and this was my hard hat the whole time we were on site. Oh. And I'm just really looking for another reason to wear the Sesame hat again. Let's be honest.
Oh my God, it's so cute.
Amanda, don't you have a story about, or like your grandfather gifted you a pink hard hat or something? Like there's more to it, right? I
do. So whenever I was a kid, and kids are like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a teacher. I want to be, all these things. I wanted to be an architect, which I didn't really know what that word meant, but it sounded cool. And I knew that word because my grandfather was a superintendent superintendent for construction. So he worked with the architects, and I was able to travel with him and go all these places. And my grandmother would go too, and she would be like his office assistant. And she always wore a pink hard hat. So I was very close to my grandparents. After they passed away, I was working on a project for Seaworld. It was kind of my first big one. And my mom sent me a pink hard hat with a little note on it that said, you know, Grandma and Grandpa are always with you. Never forget what you learned from them. And that's kind of like pink hard hats. I wouldn't have chosen them, but they chose me, you know? So, so I have a couple of them now, and they kind of go with me on all the sites.
Listen, it is always easy to find her on site as a result.
Yeah.
I always wore a plain white one because I was like, nobody finds me. But one of our old peers, Connor Carr, he has a lime green one, so he's very easy. Not that he's hard to find on his site. If anybody knows him, he's very easy to spot. And then BMP, we now rock purple hard hats. And I used to think we were going to get a lot of guff about the purple hard hats because, you know, construction sites are, you know, you get a whole mix of people, and purple's not a common color. Everybody wants one. So you got to join the club to get one. But anyway, that's us. We're crazy kids, but we both, I think, found our way to a really awesome place.
That's awesome. Oh gosh. So when you're talking about the nomenclature, either B Morrow Productions or BMP or you know, whatever, can you tell us a little bit about like the company itself?
Absolutely. So to talk about the company is really to talk about Brian Morrow. So Brian has had a really awesome career, and it's obviously still ongoing. Brian's still a whippersnapper in industry terms. He's kind of, you know, I always talk about these generations. You have the original generation of Imagineers who then trained that group of folks who's just starting to retire, the Mike Wests, the Paul Osterhouts. You know, when you have lunch with them and they're like, oh, you know, my biggest mentor was Exitencio. And you're like, what? Yeah. You spoke to the person who spoke to Walt? So, and then there's this little gap in age, and then there's Brian's generation, and it's the Brian Morrows, the Melissa Ruminos, you know, that Tony Loziers, that whole age group. And so many more wonderful people who I could go on and on to name all of them. So Brian had this really great career. He started at a nonprofit zoo in Tampa called Lowry Park Zoo, eventually moved to Seaworld at a park level, spent some time working with PCL Construction on the Asia expansion over at Animal Kingdom, and then eventually became the corporate VP of creative for the entire Seaworld organization. And Brian always says he went to start BMP because he wanted to do something different and fun again. And he felt like he was seeing, not only could he go do something fun and different, but he could also fill a gap that the industry, you know, there was not really a lot of people filling this little niche of, you know, a right-sized company, not too big, not too small, that was kind of not afraid to get its hands dirty and do all the things. And that's not to say that there aren't a lot of really great organizations out there that can do some awesome things like, you know, turnkey. But at a certain point, when you get to a certain size from a business standpoint, projects start to need to make sense and be at a certain spend level. And there's all these great clientele out there that we serve, a lot of the resorts and museums and zoos that, you know, a lot of their typical projects only get up to a certain spend level, and we're perfect for that. So our typical clientele is, yes, theme parks, especially not during a pandemic, but also resorts and other hotel properties. We do a lot of work with museums, aquariums, and we're really excited about the broad diversity of projects that we get to do, because each of these different clienteles comes to us with different needs. If anybody's been following us in the last year, you will see that we've done a lot of event work. And that was because Brian did the great pivot of 2020. And so as the pandemic was kind of starting to become a reality, we started watching, like so many companies, like 80% of our work just disappear completely. And so Brian very smartly recognized, after being through the kind of roller coaster, pun intended, of Seaworld, and surviving, essentially a very similar experience at Seaworld, where, after the unfortunate circumstances of Blackfish, Seaworld had to do a lot of the same things that a lot of other companies had to experience during the pandemic. And as a side note, I think that's why Seaworld's been doing so great, is Seaworld has kind of weathered a storm like this many, many times. And so anyway, Brian took his learnings from Seaworld and was like, well, what happens in these circumstances? They make smaller, quicker investments that aren't necessarily big capital investments, things that are going to drive the gate, like events. And so we started reaching out right away. We'd done a little bit of event work in 2019 with Baha Mar in the Bahamas, which was such a struggle to have to go to the Bahamas and mount a whole ice show during the holidays. I mean, life was tough. But we said, okay, we know we can do this. So let's reach out and talk to some of our clientele and see if we can be of assistance. And it turns out we could be. And what turned out to be the most amazing thing of 2020 was we were able to grow our business substantially, not only from a revenue standpoint, but also from a team standpoint. We brought Amanda into the fold. We brought some other folks into the fold in the time period while they were furloughed. And we've only continued to grow from that. So that's a little bit about our company. We are a core little group of about 7 now. We have a new facility, which I'm sitting in, that we're moving into, that has some space for actually doing some fabrication. We are not a fabricator. And we are not purely events. That's a piece of our business that we're really grateful to have, but it got us through the pandemic. And now we're starting to see our other work come back. So we're kind of keeping our core clientele that we acquired. And then outside of that, we're going to begin to hopefully grow our theme park business again. And we have this great empty space that one day will be filled with desks and chairs and tables for all of our collaborators to come in. We lean really heavily on the freelance market here in Orlando. We have some of the best freelancers in the world right here in Orlando, Florida. And so we really rely on them to help us get the work done. And as far as how we work with our clientele, it really varies. Some clients just don't want to touch anything, and that's fine. They've got a great creative idea and they say, this is what we want, go do it. Here's the money. You hold the contracts. You don't even bother calling me. I just want an occasional update. And then some want a lot more integration and they want to be an active part of the process, which we love. And then sometimes we're just staff extension. We've partnered with our friends at Seaworld and Universal in that way, where we're able to just help beef up their staffing and jump in where they need us in a pinch, and then we go away and there's no hard feelings, and we still got the opportunity to work on some great projects with some great partners. So that's BMP in a nutshell. Amanda, did I miss anything in your opinion?
I think you covered it. Yeah, no, you got us.
Good. It's like my title and what I just did are all like one thing. So
might be in business development.
I get to keep my job. So anyway, so that's BMP, and we're just so grateful. We're really humbled after the, pardon my language, but the bleep show of last year, that we managed to just, make it out really healthy. And it's because we have some really wonderful clients and great partners who just have lifted us up and who have leaned on us and trusted us. So we're really excited. So anyway, should we talk about some of our projects?
Oh,
Maybe?
yes.
That was my next question. I know that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was about to ask, can you share some of your projects? I understand that NDA is very much in play, but anything that you can share with us.
Absolutely. Well, I would love if we could start with Sesame, and I'll set Amanda up to talk about Sesame real quickly. So Brian, Amanda, myself, actually everybody on this BMP team, we all worked on Sesame before BMP was founded. And so what's very interesting about it for us is that we get to kind of talk about it from both sides of the table. So to be very clear, BMP's specific scope on this project was the set dressing of several windows throughout the land. I think we had about 40 something, Amanda.
43, I believe.
43.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Xavier. We are amazing, and we love working with you. Xavier is one of our collaborators, so he's a great fan of ours, and we're a great fan of his. But anyway, so just to be very, very explicitly clear, BMP did the set dressing. We worked with Amanda to develop the meet and greet space, which is part of the retail area in the land, and then we also set dressed the retail. And I believe, I could be wrong, Amanda, we also did art direction for all the themed plaster, and there's millions of square feet of themed plaster. But so just to be very explicitly clear, but Amanda was the like head honcho on that project at Seaworld. So she could talk a little bit more about the project as a whole, but just so everybody knows where our kind of dividing line was. Take it away, Amanda.
Yeah, so I was on the owner team at that point. I was the pretty much the creative director the whole time. That project was it ran about a little over 2 years from like start concept to actually opening, which is pretty fast. But we had great partners like BMP on our projects. So we were able to accomplish that. And I was able to work, in that area with them on all, I think you're right. I think it was 43 faux windows, because the conversation happens in these projects where you're telling these stories, right? And it's hard sometimes with an IP because you're telling a real story that already exists, and you're telling it with people that know the story and have known the story for 50 years. And to keep that partnership during design is very important. And actually, that's another great point about BMP. I was able to work with Sesame Workshop and BMP and Seaworld all at the same time to be able to push the project through. And, sometimes working with an IP takes a long time. And because we were able to work so well together, pushing that whole project to the finish line became a possibility. As you can see from the aerial shot, it was kind of this set on one side of the street was a set that was Sesame Street. If you're a 4-year-old, this is Sesame Street. This is where Elmo lives kind of moment. And the idea of what you've seen on TV is where we lifted. We were able to go to the set in New York, which was amazing. And my inner child cried a lot that day because it was so great to actually see, see Elmo and see him at his 1, 2, 3 stoop. But that entire area was based and lifted off of the set. And we worked on, what does this mean to a 4-year-old? What does the building mean when it stops on the set and then it gets built in real life? Is it 2 stories? Is it 3 stories? How does that fall into the set dressing? How many windows are there? Who lives in the building? What happens next? And so these individual storylines had to be written for all of these windows, all the props curated, all the pieces put together. And then creating, what happens past the set? What can you not see? What's on the other side of Sesame Street, that you don't see everywhere, and making that a reality too. So it was a really great project. I think we were all super excited when it opened. I know that I probably danced like a child in the street a lot, which I still do when I go. And then the other side of the street, which had 5 rides, it had new facilities, it had all of these moments that had to be treated. And a lot of it was based on what was lifted from the original Shamu's Happy Harbor. So it was a very interesting project. We had great partners. There's an interiors project right there. So that is the interior of the retail shop. And this was so fun because it was kind of like deciding, it was adding a theater to Sesame Street and what happens when you walk into the theater and then walk to the back of house. So all of this is kind of like prop storage, and there's if you ever have time to just go and read all of these things. There are notes from the director, and there's notes about Lost and Found, and all of these fun plays on what musicals would it be if it were Sesame characters. And then Big Bird's Nest was a big one. Big Bird's Nest was the one of the final pieces that came into the street, and when it went up, I think me, BMP, everyone danced because it was such an exciting piece to have and know. And that particular tree is great because not only is it Big Bird's home, but also families can take photos in there as a photo op too. So it really grew. Do you guys have any other photos of Sesame Street, Mina?
I think that's the last
It's just me.
one.
It's just me now. But yeah, it was a great experience. It was obviously my first experience on the owner side working with BMP, and I really got to see what kind of company they were growing into at that point. And it was just a great project. Go see it, have fun.
It's so like I abandoned Amanda partway through this project.
I wasn't even going to bring that up, Erik.
No, I mean, I feel like we have to kind of acknowledge like, SeaWorld was going through a transition period, and I was like, I think it's time to go. But leaving this project in particular, I was partnered with Amanda to work on kind of just helping get the facade. The street facade was such a huge piece of the puzzle. And Amanda was a brilliant, fearless leader, and for whatever reason entrusted me to kind of do some of the day-to-day on the facade. But it being able to go back afterwards as a part of BMP, because I was so desperate to be back on the project. I don't know if Amanda, you realize this, but I was like calling Mike Denninger, who was like after Brian left, the leader of that whole department for SeaWorld, and ThemeWorks was one of the fabricators on the project, and Brian was like, maybe I can find something for you to do. But that was such a special project, and such a special convergence of people all at the same time. And like, I feel as though, for me, and I've said this on my social media, like leaving SeaWorld, like the projects was the second most difficult thing to walk away from. Leaving the people was absolutely the hardest part. I left friends and family when I left SeaWorld, but like the good news is I'm getting most of them back over at B Morrow Productions. And Amanda was just brilliant at leading that project. One thing I just want to talk about, because I'm always fascinated by this world that we live in, is the street going into a theme park in Orlando. So there is Sesame Place up in Langhorne, PA, which is a charming, beautiful park. But this was the first time the street was really presented in full scale and fully dimensional, right, Amanda? This is like kind of the first time that appeared in a park setting. And I will never forget, we had the brilliant, most amazing colorist, Cindy White, on the project supporting us. And there were all these really fascinating discussions about what paint color the set was going to be painted. Because if you think about on a TV set, you're in a very controlled environment. It's not getting beaten by the Florida sun, 16 hours a day for a good chunk of the year. And you can control the quality of the light too. You can gel a light, you can do all these things. And it's much more compact, it's easy to touch up. And so I remember there being these kind of really interesting discussions about like having to paint the set in SeaWorld much hotter than the set that it appears in person on the set in New York, because over time it was going to fade to the right color. And like also the way the sun washes things out in Florida, just not even from fading, but just the intensity, like how we translated, or I really should not say we, Cindy and Amanda, were able to translate that color palette from the TV show that's so iconic to something that looks and feels authentic in an outdoor space. Is like one of the times I'm like, our industry is freaking awesome and academic and so much deeper than a lot of people ever give it credit for, because those were conversations that were being had, and it was at an esoteric level for sure. So, and
that speaks a lot too, Erik, to working with the IP, because it's hard. We've a lot of us have worked with IPs. SeaWorld has they have theirs, but it's a very different world than working with like a Sesame Street. So working with Sesame Workshop was just like key component to get through that. And we'd see I'll never forget the moment when we saw the 1, 2, 3 stoop painted, and we walk out, painted for the first time, and I walk out with the creative director for Sesame Street, and we're like, I don't think that's the right color. So we had to work through it. We figured it out. But it's so funny to have those moments. I like to call some of those moments catastrophes. And that sounds very dramatic, but you always have to have at least one catastrophe to learn, and you have to be grateful for your blessings and your lessons. And catastrophes have gotten me through so many moments, and I've learned from them, and I always bring them up, and I have like nicknames for them, like Rock-tastrophe and 1 2 3
my
Tastrophe
God.
and all these things. But I mean, I'm being over dramatic when I call them Tastrophes, but it's about learning from what you're doing during the project and just being really resistant to bounce back quickly and keep moving.
Yeah. So Sesame is one that we're super proud of. And we've been very fortunate to actually get to partner with Sesame Workshop and our friends at Sally Dark Rides for a different Sesame project, Sesame Street Mission, which is at Port Aventura in Spain. We don't have any photos of that one, but that was a project where we were able to partner with Sally Dark Rides, who are amazing, and we love working with them. And we've gotten to partner with them since, and we'll hopefully get to partner with them again coming up. But working with the Sesame brand is like super awesome, and it's it's a piece of so many people's childhood. But speaking of people's childhoods, how many children of the 80s are there on this current screen? Oh, Kathy.
No, wait, I'm just not gonna dive into
I'm not acknowledging this. I'm sorry, that was so rude of me to ask that. Okay, so I would love to take us to the 80s for a second to talk about another project we did that was completely polar opposite from Sesame, and talk about Stranger Things for a hot second. I don't know if that's okay with everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have some photos from a project that we got to do. This is Stranger Things. It was a photo op pop-up experience that happened at Cabana Bay Beach Resort here in Orlando at the Universal Orlando Resort. And it was a super cool project. It was actually spearheaded by another member of our team, Aaron Pine. And we were approached by Universal Marketing for specifically the resorts. And they wanted to do an activation of Stranger Things that was specific to the hotel guests, which was brilliant. We were like, oh my God, this is such a great idea. And they said, hey, we know it's kind of short notice. We've got, 5 to 6 weeks. We've got about this much money. What can you do? We want to work with Stranger Things. And so I think the expectation was like, oh, it's going to be something like what's on the screen now, kind of a face-in-hole experience. And our team got to thinking, and we kind of rallied our partners around each other, and we were like, we can do something really super cool for this. And so in about 5 weeks, we were able to get approval from Netflix / Stranger Things / Universal Resorts Marketing to do this immersive photo moment.
Oh, creepy.
What's really cool is, the way the experience worked, and unfortunately I could not find a good video to share, but basically guests would come in and there was always a line. We were so thrilled, like after we came off of Sesame, which is a big IP and got a lot of attention in the media, and then this got even more attention in the media. Like, oh my God, we were so tickled pink to see our project like appearing on Cinema Blend and several of the Stranger Things, different Instagram and Twitter handles were talking about it. We were like, oh, which also, as a side note, made us so happy for our clients. Like, that is the mark of success, when you get to see your clients' projects get published and talked about like that. And we were so thrilled that we were able to deliver that to them. But the experience is you would go into this room that we took over. It was an office room right next to the Jack LaLanne Fitness Center, which I just have to take a moment for whoever had the idea to brand their fitness center as Jack LaLanne. You are my hero. If you're watching, just to say it. But anyway, you go into this this basically like office space or like conference room, and we built a physical living room and sourced props that were accurate to what appeared in the movie, and you can kind of just barely see there's an ashtray on the coffee table, and it had a button in it. You press the button and it played that iconic kind of heart-pounding Stranger Things music, and there was some lighting, and the Christmas lights spelled out "Run," and then the Demogorgon appeared behind the wall with just a simple theatrical scrim effect, but it was super effective, and it created a video moment. So instead of just taking a photo, you had this great thing that you could post to your Instagram or Twitter, a little longer than a boomerang, but super, super fun. And I love this one because it was done super fast. 5 weeks to get approval from an IP is absurd and like never happens. I mean, those of us who've worked with IPs, oftentimes you're working with an IP that, they've got 8 million other projects going on and you're competing for their attention. And, they're justifiably taking care of their IP and they're being good caretakers. But they were just such amazing partners, not only Universal Marketing, but also the folks at Stranger Things and Netflix. And we were able to get this project through super fast. And we're super proud of it. That's one of the things you'll see sometimes on our social media, we say making blank happen, making experiences happen, making Stranger Things happen. And that's one of our kind of core tenets is like, we get it done. We just get things out the door as quickly as we can and at high quality levels. And this was a great example of that, for sure. Thank you, Red. We do think we're awesome. And as a side note, Red is another wonderful collaborator of ours, and we love working with her. So we are definitely like, there's the core family, but then there's the extended family, all the aunts and uncles and cousins.
Oh, yeah.
And, we are a big blended happy family here at BMP. And part of what's so cool about it is we kind of get to pick and curate, who's the right talent for which project. And I think that's super cool, right? Because we get to lean into, who loves Halloween. There are some of our artists that I, don't want to be called for Halloween, and no disrespect to them, I will never call them for Halloween. Cindy White will do Muppets and Sesame and beautiful Disney princesses till the cows come home, and it's beautiful. But that's what she's passionate about, and that's what she's really good at. We have some other artists that are all about Halloween and like guts and gore, and we get some of that work, and I'm like, I don't know where that came out of, whatever that was that you just drew, and it's really weird, it's really twisted, but
it's perfect.
That's what I'm paying for.
Perfect. Change a thing.
What projects do we have? I think we have I Love Christmas movies in here, right?
No
I think
Factory.
we have a little video that we could show. Side note, I just was gonna say, I'm like living my life with Regis and Kelly life right now. Our fearless producer, Caitlin, is like giving me all the Great Gelman vibes, and I just feel like this is my calling. So that was a really awesome project that we were so unbelievably humbled and thrilled to get to partner with the Gaylord Resorts to work on. And all of that amazing in-house team. And I want Amanda to talk about it, because that was like Amanda's baby. Now she's over there, and her jam. Hey, that's me. So Amanda, how are you? Talk about I Love Christmas movies a little bit. It was quite an experience.
So that was actually my first project with the BMP team, and it was great, but it was also quite challenging because have you ever tried to find 300 Christmas trees 3 months before Christmas? It's not always the easiest thing in the world. But that project was an immersive experience at 4 of the Gaylord properties, including I'm gonna say them wrong, Erik, so make sure I get it right. It's Gaylord Palms in Orlando, it's Gaylord Opryland in Nashville, it's Gaylord Texan in San Tonya.
Dallas.
Dallas.
Great.
Shame on me. I didn't get to go to that one.
I know. I got shipped off.
And then Rockies, so
Yeah,
Gaylord Rockies in Denver.
Yeah.
And it was the same experience, but all of the floor plans had to be formatted for the actual spaces. So there was a lot of front end design work that happened even before I was able to join the team. Just in placement, we worked with awesome creative directors. I think Brian was like leading that. We worked with Basement Creative on that also, and they were able to put together this experience working with WB and the Gaylord team to create a experience that was a little bit hard to figure out, I think, at first because of what our lives were going through, pandemic, and then everybody's like, this is the first step to get out there. But everybody's tired of being in their houses. So how do you do an experience like this? And so it was a guided experience, and they were able to control capacity that way. Oh, there's Snow Factory too. And so I love Christmas movies. Well, I'll go to Snow Factory in just a second, but I love Christmas movies was a experience where you were gathered in groups. So you were able to be timed, you had social distancing, you had all the parameters that you needed to be able to take that first little baby step out into the world after pandemic. And you were able to look at 5 of your favorite Christmas movies. Let's see if I can remember them. It was Elf, Year Without a Santa Claus, Christmas Story, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, and Polar Express. 6. Is that 6? I'm kind of wrong. 6. And each of the rooms had something special about them that happened, whether it was you could hear the train and see the smoke from the train going by in the Polar Express bedroom, or you had the moment where the lights get turned on in the department store and Buddy has decorated everything from the Elf movie. So it was a really fun, full family experience. We were able to source all the props. My second day at BMP, I got the list of props. It was like 3,000 individual items, down to like the deer that sits on the shelf in the Christmas Story, all the way to the milk glass or the exploding turkey or whatever the things were. And so it was a very quick endeavor to push through at the end, but it was exactly what everybody needed. Everyone needed to get out there and do something new. And then in addition to that, we were able to create and operate Snow Factory, which was just steps away on the other side of Alpine Village. Snow Factory was an experience where your family could go, and they had snow slides, so tubing down the slide, and then also a snow throw experience. Erik, I know you have lots to say about Snow Factory. I'm going to toss
Oh, God.
Toss it to you. Did you get that?
They get toss. I see what you did there. No, Snow Factory was a really cool project. It specifically appears at Gaylord Palms. And what's interesting about it is this is a partnership that we have with Gaylord Palms. We actually designed, built, installed, operated, struck, and will do again several times over the next several years, this project called Snow Factory. So there's a snow tubing, like Amanda said, snowball toss, and basically the Palms was ready to find a new partner. And so we put together a creative document with this story that you are in this factory that's iced over. And we really delivered, I think, this beautiful immersive space for Gaylord Palms. And what's been really fun about it for us is it's allowed us to kind of flex our operations muscles and our business minds a little bit, because really, truly, this is our thing. Yes, it is for Palms, but at the end of the day, we're responsible for it. And it's part of a shared revenue arrangement with the Palms. And so us doing well is good for all parties involved. So it's been very interesting. We don't think we're interested in being operators for the rest of our lives because it's certainly a whole different ballgame. But it has allowed us to bring in some other team members who are specialized in operations, who also have an interest in creative. And so we're super thrilled with Snow Factory. It's a really beautiful project, and it's coming back this year, so make sure you go check it out. And hopefully we'll be able to see ice return to the Gaylord hotels. That's a classic and a tradition for so many families. And hopefully this year it will be able to make a return with the pandemic kind of in a rearview mirror. So yeah, I think, and also I'm being asked if I can talk about the operator side a little bit, and I absolutely can. So we actually hire all of the staff for Snow Factory. They are all technically BMP employees. So in the midst of the pandemic, I think we added about 50 actual hourly employees that worked at Gaylord Palms on our behalf at the Snow Factory. So we partnered with an amazing company here in Orlando called Oddities. They do entertainment staffing. They provide talent for a lot of the theme parks here and several other folks. And we really desperately wanted to help that community because many of us come from the entertainment world. And so we said, hey, it's not performing, but you've got this talent pool of folks who don't necessarily have work. We'd love to offer them this opportunity for this hourly role. It's something. And so we were able to get some really high quality operators who are entertainers in their other lives that were able to, do everything from take tickets to lead guests in the game at Snowball Toss. And it just was a really, really cool experience. This year we've learned we are actually bringing a full-time staff to manage those folks. Before we kind of all pitched in. So Brian worked Christmas Eve, I think. I ended up going over on Christmas Day for a little bit. I think we definitely all worked the holidays, and we were like, wow, this is not normal, because in our industry, IAPA happens and it's like everybody shuts down typically, and you don't have anything to do except for show up to Christmas parties. And this was like 7 days a week up until January 3rd it was operating. And so but it was a really, really cool experience, and a little learning along the way for sure, but it was awesome. So anyway, I know we're running short on time because Amanda and I can tell a story like, whoa. So, please guide us in the conversation if you need to.
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, it was really awesome to learn about all the different projects and seeing the video and all the photos and everything. So what would you say were some of your key learnings that may have come out of those projects? Things you may have wanted to learn sooner, but you learned on that project, or clear moments of like eureka, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just start by saying, this industry, we're so fortunate that there are more and more places where you can get a degree in themed entertainment, and kind of, it's not such a mystery, but this industry is all about trial by fire, in my opinion. And we are not here to learn on our client's dime by any mean, but at the same time, like, no day is ever the same. Like, doing Snow Factory, even though we're going to do it next year, we are making improvements, and we are changing things up based on what we learned. And so every project I've taken really interesting things away, but I think for me, like, the one thing that I've taken away is, like, it's all going to be okay. Like, if you work hard and you make the best decision you can make in the moment, like, you're a human. So, like, you're going to make a mistake from time to time. You're going to make a misjudgment. And, like, guess what? Deep breaths. It's all right. Whatever higher power you subscribe to, for me, it's Jesus has got this at the end of the day. Like, it's going to open, the client's going to be happy, it's going to be okay. So, like, for me, I spent a lot of time being agitated by, like, my anxiety and, like, I'm going to mess up, and I'm going to miss this, or I'm going to do that. And, like, the fact that we made it to the finish line and everybody looks back on all these projects kindly, that was the big learning for me. It's like, you're doing okay. Trust your gut and you're going to be okay. But that's just me. I don't know. Amanda's got her catastrophes, so she might have something more enlightening to say than me.
Catastrophes are never as big as they sound, by the way. They're always these moments where you learn that you needed help, or you needed to make one minor change to it, and this is how you fix it. And they always get fixed. But I think that the biggest thing is because we are a small group, we are small, but we are mighty. And one of the things that I've noticed with us is for us to get to the finish line at BMP, we have to work together on it. We have to hire the right people. So maybe it's not core BMP, but I got to hire the right contractors to be on the job. I got to get the right artists to sell the piece to the client. So I think that that's always a learning curve as for me, and as you start out in anything new or any new projects, but knowing who you have and know what their skill sets are and having the right people on your team gets you to the finish line with a gold ribbon. And so I think that that's my thing is you got to work together. You got to just get it done. Yes, Amanda's going to get under the snow pile and spray the Gorilla Glue everywhere to get the snow to stick, because that's how we're getting out of here. Yay!
It's so true. Amen to that, sister.
I've only ruined a few shirts with Gorilla Glue. So.
Only a few, though.
Yeah.
Minor catastrophes. I was just saying in our little private side chat, I'm like, they're just catastrophes. They're not catastrophes.
Right. Exactly.
Because if they were, just crap-a-lanch, just
never anything that can be fixed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, that's such a good point. Because y'all have done amazing, ridiculously amazing things just from what we've seen here. And I know some of the other stuff that it's just insane. What are some things that excite you about starting a new project? Since they're so new, then different.
First.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was offering first. For me, I have I am fascinated by this industry. And so for me, the excitement of learning something new and getting to touch another aspect of the industry, that's what excites me the most. So when we were at Seaworld, Brian was great about letting us kind of raise our hand and say, this is something I'm interested in, or I've done enough of that, I don't want to do any more. And so for me, my first big project was Mako at Seaworld Orlando, which was awesome. And I got to learn about a giant hypercoaster. But then I was really passionate about music. So I ended up doing a lot of the music production with a dear friend of mine, Rick McKee, who's a brilliant composer. And we got to work together. And I learned about that and media production. And then I was like, I really want to focus on theming and not be playing the second role. So on the next project, Wavebreaker, which is a coaster in Texas, I really dove into theming and rock work and absorbing all that. And then at the same time we were working on Kraken Unleashed, which is a VR overlay on an existing coaster. And I was like, dibs, I want that one. I want to learn how VR is produced. And I learned about rigging models and all the technology behind VR. That to me is my that's my happy place. That's my crack. I'm like, yes, I love this. Anytime I can get on a site and learn and watch, I'm here for it. But that's what I look forward to.
I think that the interesting thing for me, just knowing that I was, at SeaWorld for 14 years, which to jump outside of that style, that box, to literally jump out of the water in some cases, is interesting to me to be able to work on, I love Christmas movies, and then go directly into a pirate experience for Gaylord Ponds, then go directly into their spring show, and to kind of work on, and then jump over to an interiors project for a kids club, and all those things, because they're so different and they're all these different moments in life that we're creating for people. That gets me excited. I love being able to do something different, just jump into a world. He said pirates. I'm like, I got it. I'm in. Pirates, yes. And it's fun too to be able to work back with those clients and work with our SeaWorld friends and be able to do all those things. And on the front end of a project, thinking of all the crazy things that something can turn into really kind of gets me going. And I'm like, yes, I know all these things. I want it to be all these things. It makes me just so excited to think of all the things that a project can grow into, and being outside the box a little bit and able to kind of take that step. And then on the back end of a project, I get so excited when it comes to the treasure hunting part. I joke around that I'm a treasure hunter, but I mean, that's literally one of the things that I do is I go picking for props. And I didn't do a lot of that on the like the back end of my career at SeaWorld, because I was in a bigger team, and it was kind of, you know, we would send it out to the BMPs to get it done. And it's been so great to be able to jump back in there and find the treasure, and then see how it's going to be set, and really art direct it from start to finish moments.
So well said, Amanda.
Very well said.
So well said. Because we're small, that is one of the beauties of working at a small firm, is we get to touch all of these things and go get our hands dirty and really be, you know, forward facing with our clients, and be a part of those conversations at all levels. Because, you know, unlike a larger firm, or even a big company, an owner like SeaWorld. I mean, SeaWorld's not I say this with love, it's not a great example, because that's also a small and mighty team. So those folks are all kind of front and center. But like at a Disney, you know, there's so many layers of management, same with at Universal, and that works for them. That's their business model. But you know, as a result of that, if you're a younger, newer member of the team, you may not necessarily be sitting in front of, you know, the end client or the executives. And we get to have a really great I just took cookies to our Gaylord client. I was at East End Market, and I picked up some Gideon's cookies, and I was like, I literally have a pound of cookies for you that I'm dropping off. And like, that's awesome that I can text, you know, a creative director for a major brand and be like, hey, I'm bringing cookies by, don't leave early. Like, that's what's cool about being a BMP. So are we taking questions?
We are taking questions. And if anyone watching has questions, be sure to type it in the comments, and we'll be sure to try and answer as many as we can. So in terms of questions I have, everyone has like their own pathways into themed entertainment. And should there be anyone who is watching that's interested in coming into the industry, what advice would you have for breaking in? Whether they're mid-career, or if they're just starting out, if they're a student, if they haven't even started school yet. So yes.
I've made it known to just about everybody in my life that this is something I'm super passionate about. So I'll field this one. And Amanda, I'm sure, has some great advice, which she should definitely share. But I had a really unique path getting to where I am. Like I said, I'm not an artist. I'm not an interior designer. I'd like to think I have a good eye. I like to think that I am creative. I know I'm a good storyteller, or at least you all are entertaining me with a laugh when I do tell my stories. But there is not one set path in, and you kind of have to acknowledge that and make peace with what you want to do may not be the way into the industry, or there may be another side of the industry that you are unaware is your sweet spot. I started Erik Productions because I was graduating, and at a time where the industry was just booming, and SCAD was cranking out new grads left and right, and CMU was like rocking it out. And like, here I was at UCF being like, I'm going to be an Imagineer. And like, I had no credentials. I had nothing. And that's okay. That's all right. But like, I started realizing I'm competing for this very tiny amount of jobs at Imagineering or Universal Creative, when there are this whole industry that came about back, you know, I always love to remind everybody, our industry is a young industry at the end of the day. You know, at 60 years old, if we call Disneyland opening roughly the beginning of our industry, our sector of the industry, this highly themed experience, we're young. And there are all these great companies out there like B Morrow Productions, like Falcon's Treehouse, like AOA, like, you know, American Scenic. The list goes on and on and on of people who spun off of their time at Imagineering or Universal. And getting in with those people is an opportunity to be a part of a smaller team, to have exposure to so much more of a project than, you know, it's not to say that your experience at Imagineering or Universal Creative would not be great. I mean, I tell Brian all the time, like, I still aspire to Imagineering. Like, that's a great goal tons of money, great IP, you know, a beautiful history and heritage. But like, in exchange for starting my career elsewhere, I've had this opportunity to just like really soak everything up. And so I would say, you know, have your goals and your dreams and your stretches, but like, don't be afraid to look in like the weird, you know, I don't want to call it the dark corner, but like the corner that you're not thinking about, because there might be this way in, and it's okay if it's a non-traditional path, and embrace if a leader or a mentor says to you, I know you want, Brian used to say this all the time, I know that you want to be a creative director and you are a brilliant creative and you are so talented, but like, I know that you are a people person. And I know that I can lean on you to go find more work for us, and that I can lean on you to curate and nurture these relationships. And at first I was like, but like biz dev. And then I was like, but actually I do love it. And because I'm at a company like BMP, it's not like I go get the work and I say farewell. I go get the work and then I'm like, and by the way, I'm going to lead this project to completion for you. Like I used to say I was going to be a producer because I thought, well, because I don't have any creative pedagogy or background or pedigree, obviously I can't be a creative director, but I could be a producer. And Brian was like, no disrespect, but like getting you to do a spreadsheet is pulling teeth. And like, if you are really going to be a producer, you got to love that shit. You got to be like all up in it. And like, nobody should need to ask you. You just got to like, that's what you're going to do. And candidly, a lot of the producer position or responsibilities are things that I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it. I promise. I'm going to do it. And then, you know, I do, and I can do it well, but it's not something I find any passion in. So, yeah, my advice is, yes, Universal, Imagineering, they're all great places to be, but there are other places to look where you might find a niche for yourself. And don't be afraid to get steered into a different path, especially if you have a mentor you know and love and trust, because they want the most successful path for you as well. And sometimes you have to accept that you may not know the path, and they might see it because they've been around a little bit longer. So that's my advice.
I would add to that, Erik, too, and say, you kind of touched on it, but like networking is the key, right?
Huge.
Like Next Gen, join Next Gen, or be a Slice Creative member.
Mm-hmm.
Meet Melody Matheny, meet all these people, meet Brian Morrow. Make your way around so that people know your name. And whenever something comes up, they go, hey, I got a card for this guy that one time that I met at the Slice Mixer. And I think he might be the right person for the job. You never know. So talk to people, learn what you can, and be amongst, the themed entertainment world.
Yep. Agreed.
Okay, I have a question. I have another question. So y'all both just kind of touched on like networking and reaching out to people. What are some ways? I know it's hard because we're still kind of in this, distancing, not able to really reach out. Am I wrong in thinking that is actually really beneficial? Because we can actually like reach out to people and they're used to being emailed and reached out on social media.
Interesting. I mean, here's my 2 cents about networking. When we can get back to doing face-to-face events, that's my bailiwick. I feel that I form, really authentic relationships with people very easily, and I do it really well in person. But I do think that Zoom and social media has been so much more normalized for, I say with love and respect, to the older generation of our industry, who maybe was not as active on LinkedIn or was not as comfortable getting onto, a Zoom call. But what I would say is cold calling works sometimes. I literally found Brian by getting his email off the TEA directory and being like, hi, I'm Erik. I started this TEA Next Gen Club, and would you please come talk to us? And like, I can't even believe the man answered my email and was like, oh my gosh, I would love to, but that's Brian. But I would say the other thing about like connecting on social or email, like it sounds horrible to say, but remember that the people you're reaching out to have full-time jobs most times, and they are elbows deep in some really stressful or intense projects sometimes. And they may not be the quickest to respond because they're having to prioritize, like, this is a project where I'm on the hook to deliver something. And this is an email where, you know, this is a kid who I would love to help, or not even a kid, anyone. This is anyone who's reached out looking for advice. And I want to do that, but like, I got to get to this, that, and the other thing first. So what I would say is, you know, do your best to be a part of when it is safe to do so again, or when you are comfortable again, in person connections, because there's a face and a name and an emotional, you know, whatever, and you're not getting shuffled underneath a bunch of other emails that come in. Because since we've been sitting here, my phone has been buzzing off the hook, and I apologize if you could hear it. But like, if you sent me an email at 8 a.m. this morning, it immediately was buried by 15 different emails. So, you know, it's interesting. I don't know. Amanda, what do you think?
I know that we live in a different world, but I agree with you. Being able to put the face and the name, and if it's not a handshake, it's the elbow bump or whatever it is right now. I think it definitely makes a difference.
Yeah.
And being able to have, you know, I'm with you, Erik. I'm a millennial. It's hard sometimes on the phone, you know, just to you know, usually shoot me a text, and that's how you shoot me a text or send a Ravens. What I tell people, like calling me may or may not be the best option, but try it. But yeah, and also, you know, it's really interesting sometimes. I when I was at Seaworld, every once in a while, I'd get like a handwritten note from somebody and just say, thank you so much for the opportunity. Or it would just say, hey, if you ever need anything, don't forget I'm here, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that those kind of personal touches, because we live in such a, you know, a technology driven age, they don't always get swept under the rug. People really appreciate, you know, communicating and having kind of a little bit more of an intimate conversation with people too.
Yeah. I really had success, again, not during COVID, but once I was able to be vouched for, you know, enough people had kind of met me at TEA events that, you know, if somebody asked, like, who's this Erik Essig kid? I took a lot of people to lunch or coffee. And that was really successful to me, because it, you know, you're kind of repaying the time that somebody is giving to you by saying, you know, let me buy you a cup of coffee at Starbucks or wherever, or let me, you know, take you to lunch. And I had some great conversations with people. And, you know, the key is to be not too pushy. Like, we all know how anxious we are about, you know, getting that connection. But like, I think, make the offer. If they say yes, like, be okay with it being 3 or 4 weeks from now, you know, and then after that, say thank you and express it in some way, whether it's an email or a text or a phone call, and just say, I just really appreciate it. But yeah, social media, you get lost in the 8 million people who just go, oh, you're a suggested connection, click, connect. And it's hard to sort those people out a little bit. But anyway, I don't know if that answered your question in a way that you wanted to hear necessarily, but I think just from a like working, you know, knowing what we know and how we interact as a group, that's kind of Amanda and I's take on it for sure.
Very.
I was gonna, yeah. All I was going to say is I only ever want to hear the truth. So you just delivered, and I am appreciative 130%. Like, perfect.
Honesty is the best policy.
It is.
Any other questions?
Yes, I actually have another question. So with COVID going on and themed entertainment definitely being impacted by that, and starting to see like some of the projects that are coming on board and that sort of thing, what do you see like trends? Where do you see themed entertainment going and growing in this post-COVID sort of life that we're entering?
Amanda, I'm curious to hear your take on it first, and I'll decide if I sound like an idiot or something.
Well, we're probably on the same wavelength. So we actually have a lot of conversations about this, especially when we're designing something that's going to live, longer than an event life would. What's going to happen next? What are we designing to? What are we thinking about? And what are people concerned about? And we always ask our clients, how do you feel about this? Do we need to take any COVID precautions? What do we need to do? And why social distancing is still very much important. We're finding that, or at least I'm seeing that long-term COVID concerns, they're not as high on a lot of clients' priority lists. And that's I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm saying that as in a way that we're going to see the light, I think is what the thought is. So as more people get vaccinated and we kind of move through the moment, and eventually one day we can go in the sun without our masks on again. I think that we're preparing in the short term for dealing with, social distancing and what's needed. But in long term, I think that there's a lot of things that will stay in play. I think that, how things are cleaned, what they're cleaned with is always going to be a thing for us in regards to if we're selecting finishes. Always need something that's has some high cleanability to it. But I think as far as, taking the harsh, effective, COVID parameters into play, it seems like we're all kind of thinking and hoping and feeling like there's light at the end of the tunnel and we're going to get past it. So building for the short term and building for the long term feel like they're two different things right now to me.
Yeah, 100%. Just to put it in the most concise terms, almost none of our clients are even talking about COVID protection measures looking forward. And it's because we are seeing such great, momentum with the vaccine, and we're seeing so many restrictions lifted. Whether you agree or feel comfortable or not, of course, is a whole other thing. But you saw Universal and Disney announce, they're not taking temperature checks anymore. And Universal was like, gone. And I was at the park yesterday trying to get on a Velocicoaster, which I didn't because I got false information. We're going to be doing a soft open. And so I was very sad, but I was like, in Florida, especially where it is the Wild West, we have been easing in for a while. And so, I didn't feel uncomfortable. I felt okay. And I think we're going to see that confidence from our consumers to continue to carry that. But one thing I do think that's a positive that we're going to see out of COVID is I always point to, if anybody's seen the meet and greets at Epcot that they've been doing with Winnie the Pooh or Joy from Inside Out. If you're unfamiliar, there's a great lawn right next to the Imagination Pavilion at Epcot. And the characters are not doing up close meet and greets right now for all the obvious reasons. And so they have Joy frolicking in the lawn, just frolicking. That's all she's doing. She's running around with a little memory ball, and it is the cutest thing on the planet. And Winnie the Pooh has a butterfly net, and he's chasing imaginary butterflies. And guests are eating it up. I grew up in entertainment at Disney. That was my first job. I didn't even mention that. I worked in the theme parks front line as an entertainment cast member and then as a guest relations host and VIP tour guide. And there was this idea, I think, in the industry that we trained our guests, you need to stand in line and you need to stand next to that character and get your photo, whether the kid is screaming or not. And they're going to sign the autograph book. And if you don't do that, you are not getting the experience. And I think what people are starting to realize is that interaction with Joy from afar or Winnie the Pooh from afar is so much more memorable and impactful than waiting in a line to stand next to Winnie the Pooh for 20 seconds and get your photo taken and an autograph and then walk out the door. So I think entertainment especially is going to be positively impacted by some of the different paradigm shifts they've gone through that are going to make for, I think, more compelling experiences with the characters. At the end of the day, that's what Disney's Living Character Initiative is all about. Interacting with the character as a living, breathing member of your reality, your society that you're in this moment. And I personally think that these moments and experiences are driving us even closer to that. So that's a positive that I'm here for. I'm like, more of that, please. I don't need to stand next to Mickey Mouse ever again. If he's going to do a magic show in front of me, I'm great. So anyway.
We accidentally lost
Oh,
lost Amanda.
no.
I know. She'll be back. Fingers crossed. Okay. So one of my favorite people on earth, I'm not going to out this person, but they have a special word for souvenirs. They call them artifacts of the journey. So what is your favorite artifact of the journey that you've collected over your career?
I will let Amanda finish, so I'll go first because I feel like Amanda's gonna have a better story than I do. I don't actually have a ton of artifacts. I'll say two things. At Seaworld, the marketing teams always invite the creative team to speak about the projects. And so there's always a hard hat tour, and there's always like a special colored hard hat with a sticker that's the logo of the ride. And I have several of those from my time at Seaworld, and those are super special to me because like you have to earn that hard hat, man, because they're like, okay, we'll give it to you, but we really need it, and I'm like, no, thank you. But I also have a model of Mako, the lead car. That was done for the project, and we were clearing out the office, and I got the permission to take it home with me, and it's a beautiful souvenir, and it's a reminder of my first project. And every time I go get Starbucks, there's Starbucks across the street, and you can like see and actually hear Mako running when you're at the window getting your coffee, and so it's super special because it's, you know, your first is always important. But I have this little model that sits on my desk at home that I just love and adore. And I'm so grateful that I was permitted to take it home with me. That was a legit one. I didn't have to like be sneaky or anything. That was a straight up handoff. So
that's awesome.
What about you, Amanda? You probably got some good stuff.
Oh, that's like picking your favorite child.
I know, right?
I've done pretty good about, you know, keeping just the things that really kind of bring like really fun, good memories that last like forever. And I have some things from my Pantopia days. I have nails from the original Desert Traders, which is what the painted camel became, because we used the nails as props. And we created like art pieces with them. So it's really weird. I have like this long rusty nail. It's kind of weird. And then I have a fake pretzel from whenever I worked on Pretzel Kitchen over at SeaWorld, because that was the very, very first thing I did when I went to corporate. So I have a fake pretzel. I have this one too. This is one of my favorites. This is kind of a good story. Does anybody want to guess what this piece of wood is?
A book?
I don't get to guess because I know.
You know. So one of the rides at Busch Gardens Tampa you all may have heard of is Gwazi. Iron Gwazi is going to be opening soon. So if you haven't heard of the original Gwazi, you have to take a look. But it is a wooden coaster that's been around at Busch Gardens for a long time. One of the interesting ideas whenever I came over to corporate at SeaWorld was to think about ways to bring kind of these moments to guests that would help them connect with the environment and connect with ideas like recycling, reclaiming, and what you can do to kind of change the world, right? So we were at the time refurbishing Gwazi over in Tampa when I worked on the SeaWorld Rescue store at the front of the park at SeaWorld Orlando. And we decided that we needed to think of a really interesting way to do some materials in there that would speak to that and to give like a story along the way, so that if guests are in there, there's a connection to you know, your life, but also all the things that are around you, and then your shopping connection. So I was able to use some of the wood from the Gwazi coaster and have it remilled and reclaimed and turned into column wraps and decor pieces in the store. So this is my sample piece that has never left me since then. And people are like, why do you have a block of wood on your desk? And I'm like, that reminds me that these are humble beginnings and that everything has a life to it.
No,
you know, there's no end to this. So
I love it.
That's my piece. This is my block of wood.
Yep, see, she wins. I knew it. Anyway, she managed to make a piece of wood like amazing because she's also a brilliant storyteller.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I am so grateful, and I don't want to like go any further because I just let's stop on a high note because that was so good. I was so touched. Everybody knows that I always kind of get teared up when people bring up emotional things, and that almost did it. That was I literally had to like suck the tears back in. But like the fact that you're so connected to these projects that you work on, you're into not just like making them amazing for the guests, but you're actually involved in like the story itself is impactful for me. Just hearing about it. So I appreciate that more than I can explain. And I'm so grateful. We are so grateful that you were here today to share your experiences and your journeys along the way with us. Like just amazing projects. Like get out of here. They're just so cool.
Well, thank you. We're just thrilled that you all asked us to join, and we're so happy to get to share a little bit of our story. I would like to just close in saying we are a family as much as a little team of non-genetically connected people can be. And it just makes coming to work super awesome. And the fact that we have awesome clients and awesome projects is icing on the cake because, this is my family here in Orlando. And so I'm just so grateful for them. And I'm so glad we could show you a little peek at what we get to do together as a group. But and we're super looking forward to the next episodes and seeing who else you have on. And if you ever need a return, I'm just living my Regis and Kelly best life over here. So you call anytime you want. I'm in. I'm a ham for sure. So anyway, thank you so much, ladies. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, ladies. This was awesome.
Thank you. Oh my God.